So, welcome to Must Reads, an interview series of books that we here at the Perkins Center for Preaching Excellence think that preachers ought to know about. I'm Alice McKenzie, and with my colleague, Dr. Wes Allen, I co-direct the Perkins Center for Preaching Excellence at SMU. And today we have as our guest an author of a recent book that we think you should know about, and her name is Reverend Dr. Jennifer Ackerman. Dr. Ackerman is the Associate Professor of Preaching at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. So she's 2 hours behind me right now. But we met at the right time. She is also the director of the Old Institute of Preaching, where she directs Micah groups, which are small group ministries to help equip preachers to preach justice in these difficult days. She's an ordained pastor in the Presbyterian Church USA, with more than 20 years of previous experience facilitating groups in preaching and worship around the country, many denominations. So welcome, Dr. Ackerman, and thank you for your book, which is called Preaching the Gospel of Justice, Good News in Community. And I don't think I've ever encountered a book whose title more accurately described its contents. That's
Well,
exactly what it's about, which we'll talk about. It's published by Fortress Press in 2024, and it's part of the Working Preacher series. So I'm going to just say a few things, and then I really am going to stop talking and hand it over to you. But just to lay things out, the book takes up the question, how do we preach justice? And it offers four kind of commitments. This is how I'm interpreting it anyway. Four commitments that we need to preach justice. And they are commitment to community, to covenant, to prophetic witness, and to a life of worship. And I always appreciate when a book has a followable flow and a kind of consistent flow from chapter to chapter. So every chapter you can count on opening with a meditation by Dr. Ackerman, and then having a sermon by a colleague that was preached at Fuller Chapel at the seminary, and also having a discussion of the theme and then a practice, so that we preachers are not left just with ideas, but there's something concrete that we can weave into our formation as preachers of justice. So thank you for that followable flow. We love that in sermons. We love that in books. So let's start with this. Let's start with your key conviction that preaching good news and preaching justice are one and the same thing, if I'm
yeah.
understanding you rightly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you very much for having me and for that very efficient and accurate depiction of what I'm trying to get at here. So thank you.
Sure.
Um, yes, I that's exactly right. I think that if you are preaching the gospel, you are preaching about justice. And I don't think that's something that's reserved for a particular topic or a particular Sunday, but it just is. I think if you're reading the gospel that I'm reading, then you're seeing a God who made a covenant with Israel that was all about the right ordering of things. And that's what justice is all about. And you're reading about a God who sent Jesus to be with us in this world and to help us understand the right ordering of things, which is what justice is all about. And our job as preachers is to try and connect that world of scripture with the world that we're living in now. And that means trying to help people see what God is doing in our world right now and connecting that back to what we know about God through what we're reading in scripture. So that's why I just think preaching good news means preaching what God is doing now, what the testimony of what God has done in scripture is, and how all of that means about how we are to live. And that's what justice is all about.
Then the first commitment then is a commitment to community. Do you mind sharing? Because I see in this chapter, I see the theme of the move from personal to communal.
Yeah,
Oh, do
yeah.
you mind sharing your story about how you got from the soundboard at the back of the church to kneeling at the front?
Oh, yes. You know what? I forgot I told that story in this
Yeah.
book. Yeah. So that was when I was the director of worship at a church in California, and it was a large church that had a lot of services, and part of my job was to keep the service on time, and that was tricky with a lot of different preachers who liked to go on past their, I think, designated 22 minutes was what they had, and often blew right past.
Oh,
So I found myself mostly really caught up in the minutia of what was happening in the service and all of that, and intimately involved in all of that. And at one point, I started to discern a call for myself towards seminary, toward ordination. And the pastor who was my mentor said, well, I'm Presbyterian, and in the Presbyterian church, the first step is that you have to be an actual member of a church. And I wasn't a member. I just worked for them. Um, and I decided, yes, I do feel called to do that. But, and then part of that membership was to actually be part of a ritual where you come to the front and you kneel and you're anointed with oil. And I said, well, I don't need to do that. I'll just stay at my post in the back. It's very important that I keep the service moving along. And the pastor said, no, 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 no. We're going to do this right. You have to be part of this. And I said, all right, fine, fine. And I did. And yes, as you described, I walked from that soundboard in the back to the front, and I knelt and I felt the oil, and I heard the pastor say, now you belong to us and we belong to you. And I truly felt a complete transformation of how I was part of that community. I was no longer just, the one waving the flag when the pastor was preaching for too long in the back. I was actually part of this, and they were part of me. And that really has influenced the way I think about life in a church, and especially in my own leadership there. And that even when I'm just doing a little interim gig or a guest supply preacher gig, there is a way that I am now part of you and you are part of me, and
right.
we're really in this moment together.
Yeah, so to me, that would be like a core memory of moving from personal to communal.
Yes,
Understand.
yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So then you also move then after talking about commitment to community, then to commitment to covenant. And it seems like you're stressing the importance not just of, let's see how many biblical verses we can add in here, but a deep dive. And so would you say word about the practice that you offer in this chapter about the exegetical journal, just briefly?
Sure. Yes. The exegetical journal practice is one that I use with students when I'm teaching beginning preaching, actually in all my preaching classes. And it's a way of moving through your preparation that I think helps you be listening and learning and gathering more from the text than just a collection of what commentators are saying, perhaps. And want to walk students through a time of just really sitting with the text and seeing what God is speaking to you, even, and then what God is speaking to what you feel God is speaking to your community. And landing on a core affirmation, which is something that I have taken from a wonderful book by Luke Powery and Susan Brown, Sally Brown, sorry, Ways of the Word. I think I'm getting the title right.
Yeah.
And the core affirmation is one of their methods that I've adopted, and I just think it's brilliant because you're looking at first, what does this text say about what God is doing, and what does this text say about what we are supposed to do? And so your exegetical journal is really an exploration of sitting with the text, working toward um, one core affirmation you can say about having sat with this text. This sermon will declare, because God has done this thing or
All
is
right.
doing this thing, we now can respond in this way.
Right. Rather than you should do this.
Right. So it
Right.
always starts with because God, we're always looking
God has.
first. And that's that covenantal piece that
Right.
because God has promised to do this or is doing this, then we can now act in this way. But we can't do it without God starting first.
Right. Right. It reminds me of Marvin McMickle's comment that you can't, don't invite before you ignite.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, okay. So we've talked about community, about covenant. Let's say a word then about prophetic witness. This is the third commitment. And
Yeah.
if I'm hearing you rightly, you think that some of these traditional ways of thinking about the preacher, the prophet, the king, even the sage are kind of monological. I'm kind of hearing that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
need to be informed with your three C's, your creativity, your curiosity, and what's the third one? Creative, curious, and there's a third
And
C.
Courage. Yeah.
Courageous. Oh, geez, that's a bad one to forget, right? So in that practice, you talk about how it's important to learn from artists. So could you say
Yes.
a word about that?
Yes. Well, and this is very personal for me because I am an artist. I'm a musician. I came into church leadership through worship first, as all musicians I think do who get involved
Right,
with the church.
right.
And it's kind of I can't not look at preaching and look at scripture without that sort of artistic testimony always ringing in my ears. And I've also started to see, and I've done some research on this, that when people who are not artistic at all, who are not creative at all, just go through the motions of some kind of creative practice, which doesn't mean that you're painting art that looks good or singing music that sounds good, or dancing in a way that looks good. It can be completely private that no one ever sees. But just when you exercise those muscles of creativity, it actually increases your ability to be more curious, to see more things, to listen better, to expand your thinking around things, to have more patience for other ideas and for conflict and for tension. And so now I can't remember exactly which practice I put in here, but
That's okay.
I do have a whole curriculum
Right,
on ways that no matter where you see yourself on that artistic creative spectrum, you can be exercising those muscles in a way that will really change ultimately the way that you are experiencing God and what you're reading in scripture.
right, right. And now I read aloud to you from your own book.
Okay, excellent.
As we come to the conclusion of I wish we could talk for 3 hours, but people don't have that kind of attention span. So I like the way that you pull all of this together in focusing on a life of worship. That was
Mhm,
beautiful. And the just a couple sentences here that I thought were really compelling at the end. Worship cannot be the place we come solely to have our needs met. It is not a place of refuge and seclusion. It's where we not only hear about the gospel of justice, but practice living it. Worship is where we live good news in community. See, there you go, your title.
yes, there you go.
Yeah, and then the other word that came after that that I so appreciated was your ending with kind of the exclamation point of what a privilege, right?
Mhm,
What a
mhm,
privilege preaching is.
mhm,
So
mhm.
so thank you for the privilege of reading and experiencing your book. It's a very user-friendly book. There are links to podcasts, right, and videos and
Yep,
audio
yep.
versions. The sermons are in the appendices, and they're also available, I believe.
Yes, you can
Wait,
listen or view them online.
okay. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks for having me. This is really fun.
Thanks for the book. Take care.
Bye bye.